Hello and welcome to A-Level Sociology. I'm your teacher, Sufia Kamran, and I'm here with lesson one of your paper three, that is education. Now, this actually, the whole paper is broad-based, contains a number of themes, like starting with the theories. We have a number of theory that we are going to uncover, starting from functionalism to Marxism to there are many other viewpoints and schools of thoughts. Some are, based on the political thoughts as well, which are not major theories. But anyhow, we'll be definitely discussing from their perspective how education as an institution has evolved over a period of time. So our focal themes are theories about the role of education, as well as we'll be also talking about another theme that is education and social mobility. So, the meaning of education, when we talk about education as a primary um, mm, structure that provides not only intellectual depth, not only the insight of the world, gives the world view, but also it's a very important when we talk from the viewpoint of the Western societies. It's a great link between the learning as well as the economy and the industry. So we talk from the context of sociology, education is basically considered an institution that has a structure and it imparts knowledge, skills, values, as well as cultural norms from one generation to the next. So we have mentors and teachers, specialized people, experts who basically impart this skill set. But it always happens in structured settings like schools, universities, colleges, and there are other viewpoints as well. Like it's not just that; it basically starts from the time the child starts his comprehension of the world, uh, from the family, from the peers, from the friends as well. So sociologists basically study education to know how its role, it basically occurs within the context of socialization as well. And we also talk about how it helps in social integration and social mobility, as well as, there are various types of opportunities as well as inequalities that are pertaining the challenges that basically are encountered by human beings. So we'll see that how it goes on, and there's a relationship between education and industry. The modern Western sociologists basically try to connect education with economy, and they say that it has its roots in industrialization. There's this economic necessity or demand for educated workers. So, and skill development or workforce preparations can only be possible by, through educational platforms to know what are the requirements of the market and what are the different, necessities that help individuals learn the different subject or skill sets. Mass education basically promotes social integration as well. It produces unity among individuals. There are chances for individuals to improve their social status through being qualified. They'll be, education can only help or guarantee their progress in the society, which we call as social mobility. And above everything, the baseline thing is that schools basically act as an agent of secondary socialization after family. Educate schools or campuses help in those, in transferring those values and those norm sets. So we'll be talking, we'll be dealing with them with a viewpoint of a number of theories. The prominent theories on education are like functionalist, Marxist. We'll be talking about some neo-Marxists as well. Like there's a very important, a very profound idea given by Pierre Bourdieu. Pierre Bourdieu gives another idea about cultural reproduction, that how education transmits the culture and values of dominant social groups. We also will be studying a social democratic perspective as well as new right or neoliberal view. So let's see how it uncovers. When we start talking about any theme of sociology, functionalism comes first. So over here as well, functionalism talks about education, in which the main takeaways are that there in society there are a number of institutions which are interdependent. When we talk about education, we see that it's a great help in preparing the workforce, the future workforce. And when we are there, when students are trained in certain ways, they are basically there to fulfill the tasks, as well as there's a functional differentiation, like the best people for the best jobs, as well as, education not only provides skills, but it also helps transferring a very important type of, norm set or the cultural transference that can be termed as secondary socialization. Then, when we talk about socialization, there are both types of, there can be explicit socialization as well as implicit socialization. At campuses, students learn so many things. Like they never know, but they are basically learning or internalizing a number of things without knowing or registering them. And they can build that join, that social, shared social identity, and they can learn a number of things like unity, solidarity, all those characteristics that cannot be taught just like that, within the family, the constraints or the limits or the boundaries of family. So starting off, we'll be talking about how in education, when we talk about, from the viewpoints of the different schools of thoughts, within functionalism, we have Emil Durkheim. Durkheim talks about in what ways education basically instills a kind of commitment or sense of belonging among individuals. He emphasizes how education, a profound role, can be seen in transmitting norms and values, creating social solidarity by uniting individuals and giving them a sense of belonging to the society. You see that there's this national anthem. There are different days, national days that are celebrated within the campuses. So, like all those things basically give that sense of commitment to the nation, to this country, the of those individuals, of those young people. Education also inculcates the social rules. Rakhine sees that school is a miniature of society where children learn to interact with others and follow rules. So this experience prepares them to learn social norms and function effectively within the broader social system. There's also this division of labor. The society basically is structured like that, that you have a number of fields, departments, organizations. There are different structures within the society, as well as different occupations. So, Rahan argues that education system is essential for preparing a competent workforce to support the complex division of labor that is there, within the society. When we covering everything like all the positive functions that are identified by Durkheim, he's also criticized by the different sociologists on the basis of this premise that it's not always the similar culture, like today's world, in modern world, there's a lot of multiculturalism. So his viewpoint of a single entity, single culture is basically a very people say that the critics basically have this argument that he assumes education just transmits a unified culture, which is not true. Critics say that there's no single culture to pass on. Uh, there can be shared norms, like there can be tolerance, common language, integrity, but and within the the existence of a lot of cultures, mixed cultures, blending of cultures, uh, particularly in today's modern world, there's a lot of diversity. So like that point is not addressed by the time. Marxists basically argue that education just serves ruling class interests. So they just counter Durkheim's ideas by saying that education only reinforces class inequality. Likewise, Feminists also have this view, particularly radical feminists. They argue that education promotes patriarchy and which maintains male dominance in society. And there's also a lot of focus on competition. Like Hargreaves argue that schools basically prioritize individual competition through examinations, which undermines cooperation and social solidarity. So Hargreaves' main assumption over here, through his criticism, is that there's a lot of focus on competition. When we talk about functionalist viewpoint, we'll be continuing functionalism by by talking about another very important functionalist, that is Talcott Parsons. Then we know that he's American sociologist, a very important name, a notable name, and he has given more enrichment to the subject. His viewpoint is that mm, education role is really significant in today's society, and he says that it's a bridge between the family and the wider social structure. And he says that since family on one side provides the primary socialization, education provides secondary socialization. But over here, Talcott Parsons gives a very useful idea that it's basically when we talk about family providing primary socialization, uh, treats children in very particularistic ways. Their values are, like family values are particularistic versus education. Education's values are universalistic. Since the society judges every individual, and it's not like family, they treat them as individuals having their own tenets and their own elements. Uh, Family does not do that. Family considers their children their own child in a very particular way. So schools are also very important. Schools basically help enable children to learn values, social values, which are essential for social cohesion. And that is known as basically value consensus. Then education also has meritocratic standard. Now, what is meritocracy? We are going to deal with meritocracy in detail later on. So, meritocracy, just to put it simply, means a society where talent or merit is appreciated, acknowledged, or recognized. So, schools are basically built on meritocratic standards, where they basically value the efforts of the children and um, since all the today's society requires a more motivated and achievement-driven workforce. Again, Parsons seconds the idea given by Durkheim, and he says that education or campuses are the reflection of society. Schools are like miniature of a miniature society. They mirror broader social principles, reinforcing the meritocracy and preparing students for social roles. So there are two key elements that are promoted by Parsons. Number one, uh, first values achievement. Education encourages academic success and rewarding high performers, as well as at the same time, there's equality of opportunity as well. Education ensures students they basically are able to compete under equal conditions with each other. And there should be like through valid test examination, standardized examinations. Moreover, every child, whether it's a very high achiever or a low achiever, everyone considers the system is fair. So there's this perceived fairness within the system. Both high achievers and low achievers view the system as fair because it is built on the premise of equal opportunities. This whole thing started off with Butler's law, and that was given by Rab Butler in 1944 in England. And, at that time, there was this realization that there should be schools that will cater to the needs of the society. So there came this idea of having a three-tier system in which the schools will be catering to the needs of the society. Like there will be grammar schools for the ones who could get admissions through test and evaluation. And then there were secondary modern schools, and the third option was secondary technical schools. Now, this kind of schooling system with a lot of division within the institutional framework received a lot of criticism, and we're going to talk about that in detail. They will send more, or we can call them as modern functionalists, and they give a better idea of how the whole system works. They will send more, have given their role allocation theory, and they say that there are certain ways individuals are taught. Like most intellectually capable individuals are assigned high reward roles. Functionally important economic roles are filled by the most capable members of the society. And this is done through a way of filtration, which is in educational terms, they are known as sifting and sorting. Sift Educational system sifts and sorts individuals based on intelligence and abilities and allocates students to academic or vocational pathways according to their aptitudes. There's this sifting and sorting thing, which is basically all the children sit in examination at the end of the year. So this is one way of sifting and sorting. Then in the larger way, perspective, we see all the students who get passed basically are selected for some job. So there's this whole broader idea of social selection. Individuals receive appropriate education and training which lead them to the job just satisfaction as well as career success. The society basically has a, just like, connecting it to what Durkheim said, that there's a division of labor. So society has a well-distributed workforce with the right skills and qualifications. As well as this thing was highlighted that this social stability and efficiency ensured, you know, all the capable individuals are basically able to fill those critical roles. And this is how a very well functioning economy can be maintained with those performers who are really competent in the relevant jobs. So, what is meant by sifting and sorting in actuality? Sifting and sorting basically refers to the process by which education system categorizes students based on their abilities, talents, and achievements. So, what we have as, in terms of examinations, tests, assessments, all come into this category. Through the exams, we basically sift and sort the students. This concept is closely linked to meritocracy where students are evaluated through assessments, exams, and teacher evaluations to determine their, actual learning and how they are going to get their, future career pathways. So, and social selection also comes into this thing. Social selection basically refers to the process by which individuals are sorted into different social roles or positions based on certain criteria, like qualifications, skills, social backgrounds. And this context of education, social selection basically determines who gains access to prestigious schools, universities, or jobs, which is often influenced by both merit and social factors, which which can be class, gender, and ethnicity. There are criticisms by the different sociologists on functionalism. They say that this whole idea of functional importance of work is subjective and which often reflects social biases. For example, the high status and pay of accountants over road sweepers. This is a debate which lasted for a couple of decades, and last in the last half century. There was this in England, particularly, this was this debate that which job is more prestigious and which job does not receive a lot of appreciation. So, like Chuman say that his criticism basically is based on this thing that there's a lot of subjectivity in measuring the functionalist importance of education. Also, Human consider that functionalist basically for a role, considering a role to be really important in a society, it cannot be actually, it cannot be judged as just like that. This basically reinforces the status quo. Like when we talk about sifting and sorting, when we talk about like this social selection theory, Tuman's idea is that functionalism basically justifies the systematic biases and status quo. Coming to a very important perspective, that is Marxism. Now, Marxism is basically, to put it really simply, Marxism is a school of thought that is based on the writings of Karl Marx. And he sees education as a tool used by the ruling class to maintain their dominance and, continue social inequalities. According to Marxist, education basically performs to reproduce the already existing class structure by transmitting capitalistic values and ideologies. It basically ensures that the children of the bourgeoisie of the or the upper class or capitalists receive an education that prepares them for high status jobs, while the children of the proletariat are channeled into working class jobs. Now, this idea of Karl Marx is basically a very old traditional idea. It's a very significant idea of Karl Marx that about education. Just like any other, he has given many thoughts on how society works, how media works, how in what ways religion, continue or perpetuate class inequality. Similarly, his ideas on education are somewhat uh, clearly, similar to what he says. And there are more, there are other later Marxists who, in a very refined way, they try to analyze and basically give a very nuanced kind of understanding on Marxism. In short, Marxism says that education is an instrument or a tool to spread false ideology. If you remember the previous lectures, it's basically the same thing as Marx says that there's this infrastructure, the economic system, which he, in his viewpoint, is considered infrastructure, and all the other agencies together with like education, family, religion, and all laws, they make a superstructure. So he says that the relationship between the ruling class and the working class are reflected in this superstructure, which primarily serves the ruling class's interests. Through this system, beliefs and values form a ruling class ideology that create a false understanding of society, which actually leave the working class, just as, simply unaware of what kind of exploitation is being carried on, and their classes and this is how the whole system justifies the dominance of the ruling class. So, according to Marx, education reinforces this by transmitting ruling class ideology by using the platform of education. This idea of Karl Marx was further strengthened by Louis Althusser. Althusser was basically a modern Marxist, neo-Marxist can be a better term. He argues that capitalism depends on the continuous reproduction of labor power to sustain profits. His Althusser's takes are really interesting when we'll be analyzing them. He says that the whole system, the capitalist way of doing things, it involves two aspects: reproducing the skills needed for an efficient workforce and instilling ruling class ideology to create a compliant and obedient labor force. So, in short, education system plays a very important role by training individuals for work while socializing them into accepting the dominant class values. So there will be, mm, there will be a sustainable kind of long-term system will be will be there, and that can be used by the capitalist. So Althusser's assertions are that capitalism basically as a system sustains itself by reproducing a skilled workforce and instilling ruling class ideology. He says that education basically supports this by training individuals for jobs while promoting acceptance of capitalistic values. You know that there has been a change over a period of time. There were shifts, there were technological revolution, the outbreak of this IT revolution. This is transformation. So, like Althusser's viewpoint is that there's constant mantra of skill development, human resource. There's this kind of training. There's this learning, workshops, mentoring, and there's always continuous kind of in the name of skill development. There's this ideological conditioning. So he says, Althusser says that capitalist is able to gain compliance and obedience of workforce, basically, which legitimizes inequality in society by through, using education as a platform. So according to these are again very important assertions by Althusser. He says that state is basically an ideological apparatus. And he says that there are two kinds of apparatuses, like ideological and repressive. He says that all states, all ideological states are repressive in nature. But with education, he says that it's not necessary. Through education, repression is not, required at all. Like the different societies use police, military, or any other force to, force people to, believe in state ideology. But when we have education, it is not required to basically the state to be repressive. So the ISA uses education to, continue or, perpetuate its own laws. So shaping pupil consciousness can one way. Schools basically instill acceptance of social inequalities and prepare students for their future roles in the class hierarchy. Teachers play a very important role in normalizing workforce hierarchies. Like teachers are the bosses, students are the, they kind of those subservient individuals who have to learn, whatever is given to them. And then he also criticizes education, the vocational education. He says that vocational tracks divert working class children from competing for high status jobs, which creates an illusion of choice or merit-based sorting. So basically, he says that this legitimizes the unequal distribution of opportunities while reinforcing class divisions. He also says that education is an ideological tool. Education maintains the capitalist system by subtly reinforcing ruling class ideology. And the system convinces individuals to accept social hierarchies as natural outcomes of personal choices and abilities, so which further strengthens the status quo without using direct coercion. Now, criticizing Althusser is very easy, basically. Why? Because Althusser does not. I believe that Althusser has his uh, inspiration from Karl Marx, and when we see the different states, the different societies, there are a number of changes that have happened. So, viewpoint that is given by, on education by Althusser of ISA, and preserving ruling class ideology, maintaining class inequality, has received criticism, and rightly so. He says that this is something, the critics say that it's something overly deterministic, which ignores the possibility of resistance within schools and among teachers. So his viewpoint basically downplays the role of students as active agents who can bring about change, who can think for themselves, or who are able to reflect on what is happening to them. So he is criticized for projecting member of society as cultural dopes. So his focus on class overlooks other inequalities, like there are other inequalities like gender and ethnicity as well, which he does not address. They come bows and ginges. Bows and ginges are basically they are also considered as neo-Marxists. Both Samuel Bowes and Herbert Ginges are American sociologists, basically educationists, who did a fair kind of, study on the American schools. In fact, their work, Schooling in Capitalist America, is a signifier of their hard work. They argue that its structure and organization of the education system reflect the hierarchical nature of the workplace, effectively reproducing workplace inequalities. And this alignment between school and work environments prepares children for their future roles in the labor market by development of behaviors and social relationships that are essential for functioning within a capitalist system. Now, how does this happen? This happens through a number of ways, like school discipline can be one way. There are hierarchical relationships. Students have no control over what they do, what they study, like in terms of curriculum. And there's a lot of rat race and like in terms of competition and individualism. Let's talk about these. Like discipline and routine in schools. Schools basically instead workplace like discipline by enforcing regular attendance, time management, and spatial organization. Like a class should be in order. There should be line in the school, the assembly lines. So all these prepare students for the demands of a structured work environment, not discipline, in other words. Hierarchical relationship, there's a kind of hierarchy. The authority and dynamics between teachers and students mirror the supervisor-employee role, and teaching students to accept authority and to adapt to power structure is just a very important reflector of what happens, what will happen in future. And there's also this lack of autonomy in education. Students have no or limited control over their education. What curricula are they going to study? Whatever is given or designed by the school administrators and policy makers are, it's basically they don't have any power share in designing the curriculum. There's also this very blind kind of race of competition and individualism. Schools basically encourage competition for grades and qualification. They basically try to strengthen that particular individualistic kind of feature, which somehow reduces or you know, it just overshadows collaboration and, a good camaraderie between students. And there's a lot of competition that is there, who's going to get the first prize, who's going to be the winner. These are the things that are promoted in the campuses. So, like, there's a correspondence principle that, the neo-Marxists highlight. They say that by reviewing the education system, it comes out as there are always a kind of hierarchy that is created. Schools basically emphasize rule following and repetitive tasks. So there are, there are low level workers which actually prepare students for low skilled and subordinate kind of roles. Then there's middle level work the focus is on reliability and some independent work, and which make the student equipped for mid-level managerial or maybe technical positions. And then higher level work, which in which there's an emphasis on working independently and taking control over academic work and preparing students for high-level professional roles, maybe critical thinking, strategic thinking, initiative taking, and leadership. And how does this happen? There are schools in UK and America which actually, provide education by grouping students through their abilities, which is also known as ability grouping. How does that happen? It is done through three ways: streaming, setting, and bending. Streaming involves grouping students based on their overall academic ability, placing them into fixed classes for all subjects. High achieving students are placed in top streams, while lower performers are placed in bottom streams. So this method often limits students in lower streams. They are not able to perform better, and teachers always have very low expectations from the low performers, which continue educational inequalities. Setting is another way. Setting groups a student by ability for individual subjects. Some students are good at maths, the others are good at English, and some might be really good at history. So, student might be in a top set for math, but a lower set for English. So, like, mm, there are subject sets that are made, and through which students are basically given extra time or extra attention by the teacher to improve their inadequacies in a particular subject. Banding is another way of ability grouping in which it divides students into broader ability tiers, such as high, middle, and low bands, with some flexibility for subject-specific grouping. So it combines aspects of streaming and mixed ability teaching. Lower bands often face reduced opportunities and continued social inequalities linked to socio-economic status. So this is something really natural that teachers with a lot of work already, it is they are assigned with a number of jobs at the same time, like teaching a big lot of 20, 25 students, keeping their files, keeping their records and all, and then extra time has to be given to the low performers. So this becomes a very hectic task for them. So all these ways, streaming, setting, and bending have also received a number of criticisms from the critics. People argue that Bose and Gildas' idea of their work, actually schooling in capitalist America received a lot of attention, but their argument is considered overly deterministic, which only focuses on economic influences, and they actually neglect other social factors. So, people argue that there are in many socialist schools, all these factors are still there, even if, they are from the similar backgrounds, they are from the similar kind of situations. Still, some schools of the other, maybe socialist schools or socialist societies, they perform even like that, like in similar ways, maybe there are inequalities within those schools as well. Moreover, Bozen just basically overlook the resistance within schools and society to the type of education they describe, which is possibly due to the limited empirical research. So they're also criticized for maybe selective kind of studies that they actually incorporated in their studies. A very interesting study was conducted by Paul Willis, and the name of the study was, it's basically a thesis conducted by Paul Willis, and the name was Learning to Labor. Paul Willis has basically tried to examine the experiences of working class boys in education through a neo-Marxist lens. Willis tried to challenge traditional Marxist perspective that focused solely on the relationship between education and economy. His study focused on how students interpret schooling and how that influences their future. So he explored how working class boys resist the school system while still ending up in working class jobs, reinforcing class inequalities. So it was an ethnographic study of 12 working class boys who were referred as lads. There are many interesting terms that are used by him. He himself actually went there, got the permission. It actually took him a lot of time, and there were challenges that before taking up the study and conducting or exploring the whole idea. So it was quite an interesting, enriching study that helped educationists shape their ideas about education. What he found was counter school culture. Well, a group of 12 working class boys who were referred to as lads in an industrial town. So these boys basically rejected the values promoted by the school, creating their own counter school culture. They viewed themselves as superior to conformist students and teachers as inferiors. The lads placed little values on academic success. They prioritized entertainment and behavior, and they often, were seen as giggling, laughing, saying, having a laugh. So their resistance to school authority and disinterest in qualification made them eager to leave school, and just they could not wait to leave school and start their own, work. Some of the pictures that we can find through the different sources. So, what were the different features of the study? Shop floor culture. The large anti-school behavior prepared them for working class jobs, particularly in the manual work. Their defiant attitude actually just reflected the rough masculine culture of factory workers, which they expected to enter after leaving school. There was also this idea of reproduction of class inequality. Despite resisting the school system, the same lads, they still ended up doing the same low-paying working class job, although they just despised that. They just despised the idea. And they commented a lot, and they just teased the teachers, teased the studious pupils. So Willis argues that this is really an ironic outcome that shows that how cultural resistance can still serve the needs of capitalism. So what was the significance um, to the study? So Welles basically highlights how education and social class are interconnected, showing that resistance to authority can still reinforce capitalist labor needs. It challenges simplistic views of schools as neutral institutions and emphasizes a complex relationship between culture, identity, and social structure. However, Willis' interactionist approach argues that working class students can resist indoctrination, which is a counter opinion to Bose and Chichester. See how the whole study of Willis has countered in a way. It is basically an evaluation. If you want to write as an evaluation, you can write from the perspective, taking the standpoint of Bose and Willis, as taking this Willis viewpoint as an anti-Bose and Gentis idea. So you can write that in that connection. Talking about Pierre Bourdieu, he's a very significant sociologist. He's a neo-Marxist who talks about culture. And in a very unique way, he has given many terms and gifted us basically many terms. So let's talk about Pierre Bourdieu. So he has given this idea of habitus. Now, habitus come from the word habit, and we know what habits are. So there's this biological habitus. Whenever we find this word, like we find the different animals in their own habitats. Animals like there are sea animals, and there are the animals that are found on ground, but and they have their biological makeup. But humans have a certain biological makeup as well, but there's also a social setup, social habitat that is there. And Pierre Bourdieu actually highlights that. He says that basically human beings have some kinds of skills, habits, and they have their dispositions, which are basically close to their, by learning or internalizing their environment and upbringing. They are shaped by culture, class, environment, and influences that they have from the society. So, habitus is not something consciously learned, but it's something internalized over a period of time and becomes a part of our identity. So, Bourdieu basically gives this idea that when we talk about education system is basically tilted or favors the ruling class. Why? So there's a big question. Yes, so he tries to explain the answer to us in very simple way. He says that there's this concept of habitus that is ingrained in our value system. So in education, he says that it influences how students from different social classes they try to address the difficulties. They try to navigate the system. There are middle class children, there are upper class children, and there are working class children. So the education system mostly favors the upper and middle class children. Why? We are going to talk about that in detail. We say that there's a close link of the type of culture of upper class and middle class children, which is different, which suits them, which suits the education system, which is not actually, which is not possessed by the working class children. He says that meritocracy is only a myth and it's basically cultural reproduction that happens. He asserts that the notion of meritocracy, like where the system is success is based on merit, it's a disguise. He says that education system in reality preserves existing social hierarchies. This happens through mechanisms such as ability to afford uh, expensive education, private schools, tutoring, mentoring, practices like, those, a membership to a good library, having all those modernized gadgets. So he says that, education system appears fair and equal to those who have more power, who have more cultural edge. Now, let's talk about. He says there are different types of culture, but significantly, his baseline is economic capital. He says that there are different types of capitals, and the most important is the economic or financial capital. Financial assets like income and wealth enable families to invest in their children more, and their education, their private schooling, their personal tutors, or the area they reside in. Their better educational facility all make them, having an advantage over the others. So there are different types of capital, like social capital. Based on economic and financial capital, there are other capitals acquired by the upper and middle class children. Social capital means network or relationships, like connection with family, friends, and acquaintances. These networks provide access to resources like advice on selecting schools or universities. Symbolic capital means, the kind of honor, prestige, that reputation that is just oozing out. Families with high symbolic capital can elevate their children's confidence and aspirations, benefiting their social and educational outcomes. So, and in the end, all this leads to cultural capital, which means those refined manners, taste, eloquence, language, which are associated with dominant social classes. So the children do have knowledge of classical music, art, literature, alongside what they know about their technical subjects. So cultural capital is often transmitted through families and increase in it just increases an individual's likelihood of their success in education and society. So there are different viewpoints regarding criticizing Pierre Bourdieu, and some say that his idea is really over-deterministic. His framework presents a very rigid view of the society. Some say that he neglects basically the economic factors, and Bourdieu's idea and too much emphasis on cultural capital actually overlooks maybe the other things like the other factors, maybe economic oppression or any other things that maintain inequality. They also say that his ideas are uh, of culture related to cultural capital. They lack detailed explanation uh, significantly in the ways that it translates into educational success and qualifications. So Bourdieu's work remains a very important, very significant work. It's a cornerstone in the sociology of education, and it has given us so much of insight into how really, some people do have an advantage over the others. Vocational education means it's a pathway. It basically, like through which students are, those students who are never able to do good, to do better and, intellectual work, or they're not able to pass those mathematics, history, or literature, all these subjects that they feel difficult. So, like they're able to get some sort of place within the society by learning and acquiring vocational education. So, it basically is based on skills, working with learning a number of maybe hands-on jobs like carpentry, weaving, art, craft, and things like that. Maybe technical work. So, like there are viewpoints against vocational education. Marxists say that vocational education is viewed as a means of social control, which manages those youth, those young people who are unemployed, and just subsidizes employers, and it lowers young people's wages rather than giving them some real kind of opportunity. There's this perception of vocational education that it is seen as low, inferior, and focusing more on social control than skill development. So there's this idea, there's this commentary on vocational learning. Although there are, if we see today's world, there's more emphasis on learning some sort of skill like computing, AI, and other fields like that are there. That very important. Fashion designing is there. So like there are different viewpoints about vocational learning as well. Now, coming to the political ideas, we find that there's this viewpoint, social democratic theory, that talks about education in a unique way. It talks about the role of democracy and the role of the state as well. Social democratic theory of education emphasizes the role of state in promoting equality of opportunity and reducing inequalities within education. It believes that education should give everyone an equal chance to success, to become successful, whether they are from whichever class, like they're from working class or middle class. So to achieve this thing, should have the state should take the lead, should take an active part in addressing the all those obstacles, those barriers to education, like poverty, the lack of resources, and there can be other problems. And they say that education is basically it's something that cannot be achieved if these barriers are not removed. And so there's a link between education and democracy. They say the central idea is that social democratic perspective considers um, these things interconnected: democratic values and education. They see education as a tool to enable citizens to participate fully in a democratic society by ensuring equality under the law and equality of opportunity. This is how they think that uh, individuals can succeed, and in terms of social development or economics progress, if the individuals are trained enough, and state should take a the leading role in these regards. So the main idea is there are two things like technological advancement and social equity. Since there's a decline in traditional manufacturing jobs, there's a rise of service-related jobs like finance, computing, and IT. So, there's more de-skilling happening. Whatever people had as the skill set is just has become redundant, and there are newly found or newly created positions. So, there's this shifting that has taken place. Plus, social equity. That means there should be equality in gender in terms of ethnicity and class. This has to be maintained. There has to be a balance in which the education system should address these problems like of class barriers or maybe gender biases. And so, like, there should not be class divisions or there should not be any inequality in the pursuit of education. And by the look of it, you can evaluate yourself that social democratic theory is highly idealistic and it just talks about the existing disparities, but gives solution. The solution is only democracy. That's not possible. Like it's not just democracy that can. The structural change, a broader structure changes cannot solve the problems, and you can evaluate it in this way that there are educationists, sociologists, linguists who have highlighted a number of other problems, like which just cannot be solved by the state. There has to be something more robust, something more nuanced that should address the problems that are there. The disparities within the educational system, the schools, the campuses, they have to be addressed in a more holistic way. Another political thought that is the new right theory of education. It basically believes that education should be based on meritocracy and open competition to prepare students for work and better serve the country. So, like a new right theory of education was basically promoted in 80s and 90s, and in UK and USA particularly by the two very important leaders of that time, Margaret Thatcher leading UK and Ronald Reagan was president of USA. Both of them were the believers in the new right theory and its connection with education. Now, how was that possible? They say that there should be open competition. State should not be there. They say that marketization and competition is the only way. They say that education systems function more effectively when they operate like a market. They work organically. Schools should compete for students, which will improve standards and efficiency. And there should be parental choice as well alongside, like the competition happening. But at the same time, parents should be involved too. Then so that to maintain accountability, then state should not be there. They say that state should not be there to control education directly. A state should perform only two roles, and those are ensuring schools to provide a framework for competition, that means national curriculum and standardized testing, and the other thing is ensuring that schools promote shared values like hard work, discipline. Other than that, states should not intervene. And so, like, its basic idea or the basic premises, education should be there for economic growth. Education should prepare individuals for the workforce by focusing on vocational training and practical skills, as well as, there should be reduced reliance on welfare state, and there should be more of self-sufficiency. And we see that, the world has transformed. There is globalization that has transformed the education in contemporary society. There's steady rise in service industry. There's flexibility and speed. Speed is the real thing, is the new thing. It has become prime factor in economic markets. Instead of education versus vocation, it is relevant knowledge and coupled with the right kind of tech knowledge, those solutions that have changed the learning modalities over the last 50 years or more than that. So neoliberal views is basically a clear reflector of what new market theory has said. Remember, the new right theory has basically consolidated by neoliberal views. Neoliberal views emphasizes education as a key driver of success in the competitive global economy, focusing on equipping individuals with skills and knowledge aligned with market demands. And globalization has amplified this role, positioning education as essential for national economic advantage. Institutions prioritize vocational training, while global organizations like the World Bank and WTO promote market-driven educational policies. We see that there are, I mean, these, the, uh, boards of the examination board like Cambridge, Oxford, Pearson, all these are MNEBs. They basically have commercialized education by providing consultancy training and materials. So basically, they are chosen by parents these days, largely all over the world, because of their standardized, structure they have, because of the quality they have maintained. In different societies, there were also a counter to whatever we have studied so far, and that is comprehensive education. Comprehensive schools were built around mainly, the different developed countries, and the main aim was to help achieve meritocracy. It was an inclusive system with a broad blend of groups, regardless of the academic differences. There was provision of unanimous secondary education, which ensured induction of skilled workers to come up to latest tech challenges of and the changing economy. There was this emergence of a truly just, fair, and meritocratic system resulting into increased upward social mobility. What is social mobility? It basically refers to the prospects of individuals from various backgrounds attain different social positions, which can involve moving up or down the social ladder. There are two types of measuring relative social mobility. One is intergenerational, the other is intragenerational. Intergenerational means mobility or a movement of a person comparing his own position, his own occupation to his parent. For instance, if a person is a banker and he compares his mobility with his father, maybe his father was some junior clerk. So being a clerk in an office sometime back, and maybe 50 years, 25, 20 years back. So this is a clear upward mobility for a person who has become a banker. So this is one example. This is one type that is intergeneration. The other is intragenerational mobility. That means growth or progress of a person in his own lifetime, in his own lifespan, like his or her own occupational change. Like previously, if someone started his job, her job at uh, some low position, maybe a person who was a part of maybe a marketing person or a researcher in the beginning, and then that person grew as from his that position to a higher position, maybe he became a senior manager. So that means a person's own journey of mobility or growth or progress within his or her lifetime. So this is called intragenerational mobility. There are many ways of measuring social mobility, like Goldthorpe was a system that was created by in Britain, and the most notable that has come so far as a very important study measure was Oxford Mobility Study (OMS), which aimed to investigate social mobility. That means the movement of individuals or groups within a society's stratification system, especially in Britain. So it focused on understanding how class structure and mobility patterns had evolved over a period of time. Now they did a lot of study. They did a very painstaking study in terms of knowing, in pursuit of getting the data of to what extent individuals from some age group to another age group, how much did they actually achieve in terms of growth or progress, upward mobility. And there were some results that they found out, but there were some, like overall, there were some failures, what we can say as, limitations that were found out. And those were, just mentioned here, that there was a lot of focus on participants who were male, class definition was really limited. There was only emphasis on occupational mobility. The study was ethnocentric, and there was quantitative bias as well. All right. So these were some criticisms that were received by the this measure or Oxford Mobility Study (OMS). Now we try to find out the link between education and social mobility, but through the lens of the sociologists like functionalists. They think that social mobility is necessary for the society to structure. So for the society to have a very competent workforce, and there should be, upward social mobility earned through merit. That means jobs and occupations, and they have to be given on the basis of the relevant knowledge and skill. In modern societies, the modern West particularly, there's a goal of mass education and provision of education on the basis of equality. And so that this has actually accelerated the pace of mobility over a period of. This cannot be possible if a society is not meritocracy. Now, to study or understand meritocracy, what meritocracy is all about, it's a social system in which individuals achieve their positions and rewards based on their talent, effort, and abilities rather than their social class or their status or their background. So, mm, in a meritocratic society, there are opportunities like America, like UK, like many Western societies, Western European societies. There are opportunities for advancements for all the people who are able to, show their talent, and they appear in open competition and pass that particular assessment. So the core principle of meritocracy is that individuals are rewarded based on their own talent, their own merit, their own ability. Merit is very important. The concept of social mobility is grounded in the idea that modern digital societies are generally, really, believers in equality. And this means that a person's social position is not predetermined by the factors like age, gender, or ethnicity, but those things should be earned by, through their hard work and their qualifications. So societies that function on the basis of meritocracy or this thing, so they are considered the ones, the ideal meritocracy. Their individuals are able to attain social levels of high achievement and effort and talent regardless of their own background. Social mobility and meritocracy, to what extent do we find that in today's education system? So we find there are so many problems. There's systematic disadvantage, there is cultural reproduction, there is sponsored mobility. So I would like you to just understand this, work on it, try to do a little research of your own, and then come up with questions in the live classes. So I'm giving you a brief idea about, the different viewpoints on mobility, and I hope that you'll come up with more intelligent questions in my live class. So see you then, definitely, and stay connected, stay tuned.